In this lesson, we'll finish up the shadows and highlights for our character's face. Alright, so in the previous lesson we really spent a lot of time working on the eyes, and in between lessons I went ahead and duplicated most of those shapes over here to the other eye, so that I'm pretty happy with kind of the way the shadows worked out for that area. So let's go ahead and move on here. We've got several more shadows here that if we hide that head layer, you can see them here sort of right around the perimeter of her cheeks. These are going to be the shadows that really define the cheekbones, especially right in here. We also have some shadows here to duplicate over the ear, and so let's go ahead and get started doing that. I'm going to go ahead and grab my pencil tool for this, and let's just go ahead and zoom in on the left side, or her left side of her face here. And I'm going to go ahead and begin bringing in a shadow that comes kind of down here and just has a nice subtle curve to it here that's going to kind of define that cheekbone right up here. So if we hide that layer again and look at that, it's kind of this line that comes right around in here. So let's go ahead and do that here. I'm going to just kind of draw this in, zoom in nice and tight on that. And we're going to come in and let's just kind of pull it in right about there like so. Now we may need to smooth this out just a little bit, so I'll go ahead and grab my smooth tool and we'll just kind of run it once over that path there. And we may even grab our direct selection tool here and just kind of squeeze some of these anchor points in just a little further here. Kind of modifying them to fit exactly where we wanted them to be. So I want the narrowest part of this shadow is going to be right up here at the peak of the cheekbone. I'm going to go ahead and pull that in right about there. And we want to protrude this out a little further down than this. So I'm going to go ahead and twist that anchor point around, sort of like that. And we'll just go ahead and pull that Bezier in just a little bit here. And this particular one, I want to twist that a little bit and bring it a little closer here. Let's go ahead and start off with something sort of like that. Now, just as in previous instances, we're actually going to come in and intersect this shape with the face shape. Let's go ahead and give this a color first. Let's go ahead and just give it this particular color right here. Now, before we intersect this, let's go ahead and hide our head layer here. Just kind of look at that shadow and see if we got that far enough out there. Let me just come in and tweak this anchor point just a little bit further. Alright, that should be good enough. So I want to go ahead and take this now, and let's go ahead and select this as well as the face shape here. If you've locked that, go ahead and unlock it here. And we'll go ahead and select both of those two shapes, and we're going to actually come in and let's actually copy the face shape first. Because remember, when we intersect it, we're going to lose both the shapes and be left over with only the area where they overlap. So in intersecting that, we'll come in and paste back in our face shape. Send that to the back, and then we're left with this nice shadow shape right here that we can go ahead and apply. Let's go ahead and apply a linear gradient to this. And we'll go ahead and bring in some color here. Let's drop in a nice brown color. We'll come in and drop in that face color here. Let's grab our gradient tool. Really kind of bring this in. Now I'm looking at this and I don't quite feel like that shadow is just right yet. I'm going to come in and modify this color right here. Let's come in and grab our hue, saturation, brightness sliders. I'm going to desaturate that a little bit here. Let's go ahead and bring that gradient out some. And then we'll come in and drop the opacity on that color stop. And we're just kind of inching that gradient ever so close, trying to get the angle and the distance just right. We'll just go ahead and squeeze that in just a little bit further here. Alright, so that's getting in kind of close, and we're getting a nice dark shadow right over here, which is where we wanted that. But we don't have really as dark a shadow as we could up here. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and come over here to our appearance panel. Let's select our gradient fill, and I'm just going to create a new fill on top of this one. And that's going to create a second fill here. We'll just come over here, and let's go ahead and rotate this gradient around. And See if we can't darken it up near the top a little bit. Just like so. And if we zoom out on that, you can see here how that's starting to pull out her cheekbone. Now, I may need to come in and tweak that just a little bit here, but, I think what I'd like to do at this point is come in and let's take a look at our photograph again. You can see here that this shadow really kind of comes down all the way to the tip of her chin here. And we only have that really coming to right about here. So let's go ahead and make a second shape here. Let's go ahead and grab our pencil tool again. And we'll go ahead and begin drawing that right about here. And just kind of bring that down to a point right there near her chin. Something like that. And let's go ahead and smooth that back just a little bit here. And if we need to, we can come in and grab these individual anchor points, pulling those Beziers around as needed. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and intersect this shape as well. Let's go ahead and first apply a color to it. And then we'll copy our face shape, select them both and intersect that, paste back in the face. And let's go ahead and use our eyedropper tool to sample that gradient that we had on the other shape over here. So now with our gradient tool, we'll come in and just kind of pull that back a little bit and rotate it around. So really, at this point, these nice subtle shapes, or these nice subtle shadows, really what's going to be key is that you get your gradients in exactly the right spot. So I'm going to come in here and just kind of play with this just a little bit further. And I may even transform that shape just a little bit. Let's go ahead and bring some of these anchor points out and away. We'll turn on our smart guides to do this, so we can intersect them with that path. Just sort of like that. And let's bring this one up just a little further. Alright, great. I can always come in and clean that up if I need to. Remember, our hair is actually on top of that, so that one doesn't necessarily have to be perfect as far as being fitted to that shape. But let's come over here and just rotate that gradient just a little more, bring that in. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. Let's come over here to the other side of her face and think about some areas where there might be a shadow that we can apply over here. Now, obviously there's an ear right here. We need to go ahead and hide that. So we'll go ahead and start there. Let's go ahead and first take a look at our photograph, make sure there's nothing funny going on here. Looks like we just need to create a little shape to hide that ear, or at least push it back some. So I'm going to come in here and we'll just draw in a shape right about there like so. Smooth that out a little bit. And we'll just turn those Beziers some. Alright, so let's go ahead and just start with one of the gradients that we were using over here. Let's just go ahead and eyedropper that and see how that looks. That first sample actually doesn't look too bad. Let's go ahead and adjust that gradient just a little bit here. I'm actually going to go ahead and change the direction of that so that, let's go ahead and redraw that about like so. I'll go ahead and make this a nice long gradient here, because most of that ear is going to be back there in the shadow. Alright, great. Now, if we were continuing on down her face here, I would probably come in here and do this shape right here next. But since that's going to be pretty similar to the other side of her face, let's go ahead and bounce down here, and let's go ahead and look at our character's chin. First of all, we need to kind of create this shadow that's being cast underneath the lower lip here, but there's also this rounded object that's being protruded out. So we may actually create a couple of shapes for that here. Let's go ahead and bring our head back, and let's go ahead and just grab our pen tool for this one. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off smart guides here. I'm going to start up here, and we're going to end up drawing this out just sort of like so. And we'll bring it up and around. And this is actually going to go underneath her lips, so I'm not really concerned with that. We'll just close that off. So let's come up here to Object, Path, and choose Join. There we go. And let's go ahead and take this shape, send it all the way to the back, and then bring it forward one. And we'll grab our gradient tool again here. So you can see here that we've got our gradient drawn from the opposite directions we probably should. So we'll just go ahead and draw that in sort of like that. And you can see that shadow's really starting to take shape. I may come in and modify that shape just a little bit in between lessons, but I'd like to go ahead and create one other nice subtle shadow here with you before we end this lesson. And that's going to be kind of to pull out the chin just a little bit here. So to create this shadow, I'm going to go ahead and just draw in a shape. Let's go ahead and zoom in here. And I'm going to draw in a shape, and we're going to bring that in sort of like a bow tie, right around in here. And there we go. We'll smooth that out just a little bit. And we may need to bring some of these anchor points up some. We got a little bit far down with those. All right, so the important part is that we have kind of pulled out this round shape down here. All right, now that we've done that, let's go ahead and apply a linear gradient to this. Come over here and apply a linear gradient. Now that's awful dark, so I tell you what, let's come over here, slide that dark one to the center. Let's go ahead and make a copy of this one over here. We're going to let's go ahead and send this all the way to the back and then bring it forward one. All right, great. Now that's still pretty dark. I don't think we need this to be quite that dark. So I tell you what, maybe we come over here and grab sort of this flesh tone and drop it on top of that really dark one there. Maybe we even go a little bit darker than that. Let's come in here. Saturate that up a little, make it a little more red, and even bring the brightness down some. And I tell you what, let's go ahead and zoom out and see what that looks like. And it seems like that dark center is going just a little bit too far, so I'm going to kind of constrain that just a little bit by pulling in these midpoints on our gradient slider. Pull that one in just a little bit further. And we can always grab that shape and move it up just a little if we need to. And I may come in and modify that just a little bit. Maybe it doesn't need quite to come down this far on either side, but the important thing is we're starting to pull out that chin shape here, and you can kind of see that taking form. So I tell you what, in between lessons, I will go ahead and create another shape or two over on her right cheek to kind of pull those out, and I may even create a couple of shapes here to pull out some highlights. I tell you what, let's go ahead and actually do that now, because those are kind of important. If we look over here, on her cheekbones, there are these nice, almost triangular shapes that really have kind of a light-catching feature to them, or a light-catching attribute. So let's go ahead and grab our pencil tool here, and we'll just go ahead and draw a couple of those in really quick. Just come in here and draw in sort of this triangular shape. Sort of like that. I may bring this up just a little bit higher over here. And I tell you what, let's go ahead and apply a gradient to this. I'm going to go for a radial gradient this time. And let's go ahead and pull some of these color stops off. And I tell you what, let's go ahead and pull this one down. And for this one, let's go ahead and pull a lighter flesh tone down. Something like that. All right, great. Now that we've got that done, let's go ahead and grab our direct selection tool, and we can kind of pull maybe this anchor point over here out just a little bit. Kind of bring that shadow out, or excuse me, that highlight rather, out a little bit further on her cheek. And then we'll grab our gradient tool, and let's go ahead and modify this gradient just a little bit here. Maybe we could pinch that down a little bit, angle it a little bit more with her with the direction of her cheekbone here. I I think the outer portion of the cheekbone is probably going to catch a little bit more light than that inside area. Alright, so you can kind of see what I've got going on here. This still needs a little bit of work. I may go ahead and play with this just a little bit in between lessons and get this last shape cleaned up just a little bit here. But in this lesson, we have really kind of finished going over the face. And I'm not going to spend much more time on our face, even though this is one of the focal points of our illustration. We need to go ahead and move on to some of these other areas. So I tell you what, in the next lesson, let's go ahead and shift our attention down here to her chest area, the area that's revealed by her open shirt, and we'll begin building the shadows and highlights in that area.